Good evening. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the San Juan Bautista Planning Commission. If you'll join me, we will stand and have our pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a roll call. Staff.
Andy Barrett. Here. Georgiana Belarte.
Here.
Pat Garrett. Ernest Franco.
Here.
David Medeiros.
Here.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. Anybody have any comments on the agenda? If there's no comments, I'll call for a motion to approve as submitted.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the next part is the public comment. Any person in the audience who would like to speak to the Planning Commission on an item that is not already on the agenda. If it's on the agenda, would you hold your comments until that time so it becomes part of the total record? But if you don't want to tell us how good we're doing, now would be the good time.
Okay, Rosemary Hernandez.
Hi, my name is Rosemary Hernandez. I live in San Juan Bautista. We moved here about 10 years ago when my son Adam was born. And I love the town and I appreciate all that you guys have done to keep our town small and historic. In reviewing the website for the general plan that was posted, there was plans for new city parks for 2015. And it also made a comment on a reference to the bikeway along San Juan Creek Road. I think it's the one that connects San Juan to Anzar. My only comment to that is, having a 10 and a 9-year-old child in the city, I would really love to see those new parks happen by 2015, if that is still our vision. And the bikeway, I did call the city planning office about 6 months ago when it was just about completed, requesting that they lower the miles per hour. At 55 miles per hour, it's very difficult for me to, in good conscience, use that either myself as an adult, and there's no way I would let my children use what is marked as a bike path. So I was told it's a county road and that I should contact the county planner, but I just want to give the voice of a mom of small children that plans to live here and send my children to Anzar, and I would really like to have a usable city that's family friendly and that has the conscience and the safety of my children in your plans for the future.
And the bike path you're talking about is from here out to Anzar?
Yes, I live on First Street. Mm-hmm.
First Street, okay.
So it goes all the way out.
And its speed limit is 55?
Yes, I did check with the sheriffs and the highway patrol, and that's a non-posted road, but it's 55 miles per hour is the acceptable speed limit on that road. But I do thank you. I know that you are moms and dads and grandfathers and fathers and mothers, and I know that you guys do take that into consideration. But I just wanted to be a voice of what I'm seeing and what I would like to see for our city.
And if you would direct your letter to Steve Wittry, is the Public Works Director, and put a carbon copy or CC to Lisa Ramsted. She's with COG, and they look after the bike paths and the funding for that.
Yeah, and I know there's some federal funding for safe routes to school, safe walk routes that encourage biking and walking. So, again, I know that's active and happening in Santa Cruz County, and I don't know what the status is in San Benito County, but I am considering reaching out to other agencies that can help support that as well.
Have you discussed that with the school?
With Anzar or San Juan?
Yeah.
No, my children don't attend our schools here locally, but
Okay.
that's something I can do.
Okay, thank you.
Attend a meeting of the board of Education for the Roma San Juan School District. And that would be another good place because that is a governmental agency, and they would have the right to get involved and comment, because if they start losing students, we'll lose the whole bike path. And that'd be a negative twice.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hate to
Thank you
lose
very
a
much.
student, period.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other public comments on items not on the agenda?
I have no other speakers.
Okay. There being no other speakers, we'll go to the next item. Informal project review. Are there any projects that a person would like to bring before the commission for an informal review No action will be taken, but we'd be able to discuss informally and maybe get some ideas back so that when the formal presentation is made, it will have a stronger leg to stand on. There being no proposals for an informal project review, we'll go to the next item. We have a consent agenda with 2 items, the affidavit of posting and approval of the minutes of March 5. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve both A and B as one.
A motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous again. Okay, now we go into the next set of items. Discussion items. We have developing a strategy for general plan and sphere of influence from 2015 to 2035. Staff, can you brief us on this?
Yes, Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. As you're aware of, our general plan, and we have a notice that I put into your thing we got from the OPR, and is the plan expires in 2/15, and if we wait until 2/15 to start the initiative, it's going to be there. And I wanted to hit the ground running and at least get the dialogue going of how we should proceed on what we should do. And that's the nature of why I scheduled it for the meeting so that we could discuss this. And I put in your packet a copy of the existing general plan, which is the one that's on the wall, the smaller one, okay? That shows our sphere of influence, our planning area, our urban growth boundaries, and the various zoning districts, okay? Then what I did was I downloaded from Google a map that kind of shows the whole area, but I identified it all the way out to the Anzar School. From there, takes from the mouth of the San Juan Canyon all the way to the confluence of the Pajaro River with Highway 101 and the 129 intersection, which is out there by Willis and the Anzar School. And again, I just wanted to get the dialogue going and find out how you feel, whether we should stick with our planning area now and then start a strategy of there, or do some type of a modification.
Could
Yes.
you briefly, either for the audience or here or the audience at home, could you just touch on what a sphere of influence is?
Well, the sphere of influence is where we've established in our planning area there, where any development that occurs in there, we should be consulted and have input. And this primarily is we deal with the San Benito County Planning Department, and our sphere of influence is important because when there's land use and development criteria that goes on next to our city, we should be brought up to our attention so that we have input. It has been lacking recently, and we want to reinforce that.
Would there be no tax benefit?
No tax benefit.
Okay.
No. Yeah. Mhm.
Can we get a copy of that? Or see that?
Might
The
be-
Google map?
Oh,
We have an extra one under
oh,
There's
the
an extra one.
existing one or the?
Oh, okay, I see it.
Yeah. Mhm. Existing one is there. Nothing more there. This one here
One
is
is
just.
the,
It's an item there. Let me see. Do I have an extra one that's
Is this
in
it?
mine?
There might be one in the book. Right
Yeah, I
there.
have one here, so you can, have that. Basically, it's I downloaded it off Google and pieced it together. It just shows you exactly where everything is from our city limits in here out on Old San Juan Road. It shows Prescott and San Justo Road there where True Leaf is, and then as you go north, there's Earthbound, and then as it forks and then goes up, then you've got the Aromas High School, San Juan Aromas High School, and then right beyond that, right next to the San Benito River is Willis Concrete Plant, and the 101 Highway and 129, and then you come there and then you can see Alpine Lake and the RV Park as you come down on the 101, and you come down to the Campanella, and then down 156 and back into San Juan.
I would like to see us expand the sphere of influence, but already we're not being informed of what's occurring within our sphere. So
Yeah, right. That's
it doesn't-
being taken care of.
Okay.
I've had a meeting with Gary Armstrong has left, and I mentioned to Brian Turner, and he's going to make a special effort to make sure that we get a copy or at least a notice of every development in our sphere, our current sphere. And I told him that we're discussing ramifications of a new sphere of influence.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner.
if, since we are getting so involved with fire in more areas than just within the sphere of influence, I would like to see the sphere of influence increased toward San Juan Canyon and perhaps out to the retreat as well, off of Mission Vineyard, because there are 100 acres on the way to the retreat that is yet undeveloped and almost visible from San Juan, as well as the ridge line here in town and then on up to San Juan Canyon. Maybe Mr. Ponce can help me recall. I think several years ago the sphere of influence went as far as 3 miles up the canyon.
I think they talked about that.
Yeah, so
And that's a good point, because particularly with the new fire contract between Hollister and San Juan and the county, our primary responsibility is the San Juan Canyon now. One of the primary.
Is there a limit to how far we can go? Is it 3
Any-
miles? Is it 5 miles?
No, any place in the western portion within San Benito County.
Yeah,
That's
my
our designation in that fire contract is we're going to be substation number 4, and we will have first response from Union Road westerly all the way to the San Benito County border, which would be on Carpinteria. Now, we interface with Aromas Tri-County Fire District there, and then the Anzar Hills.
some of that area out toward San Juan Grade Road or Salinas Grade Road, whatever we want to call it, is industrial as well as conventional and so forth.
Yeah.
So we need to be informed of that because we don't really have any industrial right in San Juan itself.
Yeah, and you can see it on the map right there as it bifurcates and it goes up the old Stagecoach Road and the Salinas Road, that little white area there, that's the fish market, yeah, right. And that's zoned industrial in the county.
Are we required to provide any services to those within our sphere of influence?
The sphere of influence includes, you don't have to provide services, but you have to have the intent that you have the capabilities to provide it.
So that would include water or fire?
Yeah.
Well, the fact that we've got fire, I think, is pretty clear that
Yeah.
we have to account for it some way. And I think up the canyon, since it's a dead-end canyon,
Kind of, but we don't like to think of it exactly that
Okay.
way.
Yeah, cul-de-sac.
There are escape routes, but they're not regular
it's a
roads.
cul-de-sac canyon. Okay,
And I can expand the Google map to include up to the retreat and then up the San Juan Canyon, and then we can decide our limits and stuff like that on it.
I would like to go further out.
Yeah.
In
I
my opinion,
originally-
I'd like to go up all the way to Fremont's Peak, period. Go and circle around San Juan Oaks to the intersection as you go into Hollister and all of San Juan Valley.
But District 2?
The what?
District 2?
District 2, yeah.
Would be
But-
pretty ambitious, but yeah, right.
I know, but
Sometimes when you get too big and then you can't provide that service, then you're going to get in with LAFCO that'll say, wait a minute, but it has to be, there has to be a rationale. But those are good points, and I think earlier you had said, why not we include Rancho Larios and then out to the Campanella and then around and into that quadrant.
Yeah, kind of where San Benito River joins up with 101, and then of course across parts of 129 too as well.
does LAFCO have written guidelines or standards that they look for when they, because they're going to evaluate this and they're going to say, hey, let's get down to this. We need to go step by step. And if we want to jump over those steps, we're going to have a good justification. But to start with, how broad are their standards?
It's implied that your ability to provide service, that's the key to it, and that goes back to the same thing, is that when you do your sphere of influence, that opens the window to say this is where potentially you would like to annex. And if you're going too far out, then you say, hey, that's unfeasible and won't be annexed. And the annexation process it's tied to the ability to provide service.
And there wouldn't be any leapfrogging. It would be one continuous annexation.
And then the other criteria that LAFCO has is for annexations, it has to be contiguous and an outward growth. And a good general plan that any government has is they have an outward growth where they don't leapfrog and strip annex and go out and grab a big piece and go there. It grows in rings and bands and stuff like that.
I'm not worried about leapfrogging out. I'm worried about leapfrogging in from outside our sphere of influence.
Because it's county. We're dealing with county, not another city.
County.
Looking at us.
See, counties are not in the business of providing services.
Exactly.
Cities are. So if there's any major development, they're going to look for city services because the county, like I said, they run different services and they deal with the great unincorporated areas, the large ranches and stuff.
And what's happening over the last 30 or 40 years ago, that was the criteria. Board of Supervisors encouraged growth and development to be inside the two cities because they didn't have that provided. Well, then all of a sudden, CSAs came along. And CSAs are service districts, and they've expanded that to where they have police, fire, storm drain, parks, and those service districts are just like providing the same services that a municipality, only it's almost like an assessment district.
And they collect the tax for that, and we are denied it even though those people are essentially right next to us.
Yes.
Well, we could fight the establishment of a county service area and remind them what it's all about, that's anything that big should be in the city. It should not be just another city. Basically, we're talking about an unincorporated city with its own ruling body as a county service area.
And I think that's the crux of a good sphere of influence. It's right around your city where you really want to have control of it so that you can ultimately annex it and provide service. And that you want to be a stakeholder in the development and anything that's being considered.
And provide service back to us.
Yes.
As well.
I look at
Property
how
tax and
fast
so forth.
Earthbound is growing and expanding, and who makes those decisions? The county planner or the board of supervisors, or?
Well, it's a combination of both. That's an agricultural orientation, and they make the application to the planning department, and then they circulate it, and if it's a big expansion, then they would have to satisfy the California Environmental Quality Act, and then they would have the hearings, and so it's...
And right now, they're not in our sphere of influence.
No, they're not.
See, the county has a planning commission. They're going to do the same thing we do for within our city limit lines. The county has, if you don't like the decision of the county planning commission, you have the right of appeal to the board of supervisors. Just like from here, you go to city council. So what we want to do is...
I like to think that we've got to be a little bit pragmatical about what our ability to serve is, but know where we can respond and provide service, and it's an orderly growth. And what we foresee within the next general plan that we embark upon is from 215 to 235, the next 20 years. And so sometimes you got to look down and just say, a number of us won't be around, but what will our city look like 20 years from now?
And we're taking
Richard will
good
be
care
around.
of it.
Yeah. I think, if I can say something, I think when they first developed this sphere of influence, it was, like Roger said, it's something we can handle. If we get too big, like somebody suggested, it's kind of like a promise that, yes, we will invite you or help you get into whatever you want to do. And I don't think we want to do that. We don't want to get too big to where a developer could come in and say, well, it's in your influence, so that's like an invitation. I don't think we want to get too big.
Yeah, I was thinking, I'm thinking about protecting our environment,
Right.
you know, agricultural, and of course the San Juan Canyon, you know, where San Juan has something to say about large developments in those areas.
That's where the chair just said that there's other steps you can take, city council,
Yeah.
board of supervisors,
Right.
et cetera.
Should he be at this, should Richard's remarks be on the television? Can you, because you were saying some good arguments.
Well, that's part of the discussion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
And this is just good dialogue. It gets the thought process going, and that's what we have to start thinking about.
So will the city council, what did you call it, select a committee to, is that going to happen within the next month or so?
Typically, when you get
You're sitting
into
on that committee.
Yeah.
typically when you get into a general plan, you will have a citizens committee
Right.
that is composed, and they give you the interactions and everything, because it has to come from this community rather than from the top down. And so that's part of the requirements of a general plan. And there are elements, there's mandatory elements, and then there's discretionary elements.
I'm just thinking, what about the strategic planning committee? Can they play a part in that?
Yeah, the strategic planning committee goes hand in hand with our general plan,
Yeah.
and they will dovetail into a lot of areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, you may have a strategic committee, strategic plan committee, but you will have, by law, a planning commission.
Right.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah,
plans that we
and
do here
That's that
will
notice
apply
that
to
I gave
everybody
you
else.
from the OPR that puts the burden on us, is that you will have a general plan, and that will have to be up to you.
Yeah.
I printed out the first 7 pages, I think, of the general plan, and there were 13 members of the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Oh.
But there were technical consultants. So do we have to hire consultants?
Yeah, that's entirely up to your direction and the committee is
And the
how
budget.
you want to attack that.
Yeah.
I mean, you could hire a consultant to do the whole thing, to meet with your committee and come back and report.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're up to that.
County is just coming off theirs, and I think they've been close to $2 million. I think.
Wow.
I think Monterey, remember when they had theirs, and I think they were up to $6 or $7 million in 6 years or something like that.
Yeah, they've gone up,
Yeah.
increased.
Yeah,
Are
and there was a
there-
lot. There was a lot of stakeholders in that were arguing and filing appeals and stuff like that. I think Ernie knows more about that. Yeah.
Is there a template that you have to follow? I mean, would we follow the same template? Are there requirements?
There is a document called the General Plan Guidelines.
Yeah.
There is
And
that.
it's a book about yay thick. It's online.
Okay.
But it's just, step by step. You go through that thing. And then there's one about that big for the design, what do you call it, the California Environmental Quality Act. I mean, Office of Planning and Research has done an awful lot of work to make it easier for folks to work
Many
with.
of the elements are pretty, when you develop your sphere of influence and you look at your transportation, your safety element, and then we've worked on the housing element, and that's being reviewed now and stuff like that. The land use is probably the most controversial, and that's where you get most.
Yeah.
Everybody wants the highest and best use of their land, and you can't satisfy everybody.
Can't all be industrial.
Yeah.
But I know OPR will, like I said in that letter, if you're over 8 years, they'll start talking to you, and if you're over 10 years, they refer that to the Attorney General's office.
Yeah.
What could happen at the worst, and it happened in Monterey County, somebody wanted to do something down in the mouth of the Carmel Valley, and there was a big, the environmental group says, what they're doing is inconsistent with the plan, and the courts took over, and they froze it. Monterey County pulled out $1 million, hired a whole separate section, general plan team, and they had 3 years, and that's all they did with general plan studies. So it's that serious. I mean, they can close it down in as much as they could say, you're not going to issue any permits without our okay. And we don't want that. And it's like with the housing element, we've been denied access to certain funds because we don't have a housing element. And again, when you start doing elements, you don't do an element by itself. You can't say, well, we're going to have an airport plan. No, if that airport's in your city, it's part of your city. And it better be tied into your circulation element. It better watch where it's flying over houses, or make sure there's no houses going to be built in the fly line. And all of these things are interconnected.
Yeah.
And as soon as you pull one, I say, well, I don't need your general plan. I'm going to do the housing element. We're going to have a housing plan. If it isn't tied into transportation, people aren't going to get any place. If it isn't tied into your capital improvement plan, nothing's going to happen. In fact, your capital improvement plan, you better have a good one, because if it isn't tied into your general plan, you can't access that either.
And the capital improvement plan has to be consistent with your general plan.
San Jose used to do leapfrog, and they'd run a big sewer line out to your development out there, 2-3 miles away, and all this agricultural land. Well, he just condemned it. So the reason I'm saying some of this stuff is I want to make sure you understand how significant a planning commission is to its city, and the burden that's put on us to make sure that we do in fact represent the folks, and that we come up with a plan for my case, grandchildren, because like Roger says, we may not be here.
And that's where, and I can get you all the documentations of the sequence from OPR, and as we follow it. I wanted to start the thought process there is what is your sphere of influence, and how we want to bring that in to provide that service, and then we can start to zero it in there, because then everything starts to fall into place, because we've got to look at circulation, open space, conservation, all of those elements that are part of that, as well as land use.
Another one I think that would affect you, Georgiana, or Commissioner, is the wildland fire. I mean, that is something that, you didn't have to do in small cities or other places, but because of that canyon and all the folks up there, basically, this is their city, even though they're outside the city limits. There's only one way out, and that's through San Juan Bautista. So that will have to be considered. I don't know whether it's in safety, but that, again, we have to make sure that if you had mining, we'd have a Surface Mining Reclamation Act. Somebody's dug a big hole, they better fill it up and start putting plants around it, whatever it takes.
We have a mine, I think, out at the old cement plant. I think that one of the overburden over that whole pile out there dictates that it's a mine.
Is it a mineral? It's not designated as a mineral resource, is it?
I'm not sure how it goes, but I know that people have not been able to afford to use it for agricultural uses, because it has an overburden of earth so many feet deep, therefore it's taxable.
Wow.
Yeah, and like you say, if we look at the map that I've downloaded from Google there, and as you go out towards Earthbound, and you can see then there's the Nyland Quarry, which is a mineral reserve, and that's designated in the San Diego County General Plan, And that's right on the fault line that runs right below the mission, and then right on. You can almost see where that fault line runs right up through there, and the quarry is right at the southwestern portion of that fault line.
There's two, and then one across the highway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you like us to do today as far as the sphere of influence?
Yeah, I just need your input, so that I've got some ideas already where we want to expand this map and take a look at the retreat, St. Francis Retreat, and up the canyon, and then we can start to develop how we want to, what kind of control that we want to do outside our boundaries.
I would suggest that if you can get us from LAFCO, what are they going to be looking for?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that we can work within or work outside of it.
LAFCO criteria.
So I think we should know what the rules are. In other words, certain things we're going to fly. And if we want to go beyond that, we better have a good justification. But at least we know where we need to start the justification.
And LAFCO does have a new executive director, very knowledgeable, and I will meet with him and see if he can come over and talk to us.
Well, let's go one more. Would you like to have the LAFCO director, would like to invite the LAFCO director to come and speak to the Planning Commission?
Sure.
And the public, because sooner or later, everything he or she does is going to be public record. And could you arrange that?
I will make contact
Not too
and see
soon.
what his schedule is. Yeah.
Not too soon?
Is that support?
I would actually like to do some reading before I meet somebody.
Well, they can bring the
what to
stuff with
ask.
them.
So
But I mean,
Well-
the thing is, all of these agencies have people in charge so that have something to say about what we do. You know, whether it's a water, it's like a sewer district, a garbage district, you know, and it's a school district, they all affect our job as planners. So what I'd like to do is invite every one of them. You start the general plan process, they're going to start talking about water or sewer or landfill. Do you really understand it? Their role in planning. And we're going to say, we would like you to speak to the Planning Commission about the role of LAFCO in city planning. And that person will have to start telling us what justifies their existence, you know, the various laws, etc. But that would give us a good basic education in the field of planning, because general plans take a long time. But the more you understand who the players are, the better, the easier it's going to be for us to do.
So Roger, will you be going to City Council, getting their input as well, or does it kind of reside with this board? Or
I will bring this to the city council and get their input as well as yours, and you know, because it's got to be a team effort, and you know, and in the meantime, I'll get as much information. I'll get the OPR general guidelines for the guidelines for general plan, and then see if I can get some background on LAFCO criteria for you, so you can read. And then what we can do is I'll expand this map, bring it back to you, and then after that, maybe then we can invite the new executive director.
There's one thing that was done for the Airport Land Use Commission. OPR sent out CDs with the Airport Land Use Commission law and all the various ancillaries, because even though it's an airport law, it touched education, it touched transportation, all of these different departments. You cannot build an airport within, say, 2 miles of the school. Or if you do, you better bring it to this commission to judge. I'd like anything that happens inside of our sphere of influence, hey, you don't move on it until. I would like that to be a county policy. Nothing moves in San Juan's sphere of influence until it's been reviewed by their planning commission or city council, whichever agency is appropriate. But if we don't tell them what we want, don't blame them for not supporting it.
Bear in mind, you've got goals and objectives, then you got your policies, and then you have to develop programs that will implement those policies. So that's the mindset that you have to look at, is your goals and objectives is what you'd like to have accomplished, and then your policies to achieve that, and then the programs that would augment that.
See, I don't think city planning happens. It's made to happen. You put that general plan together, and like you said, here's a program to do this. Here's a program for parks. Here's a program for trails. But it all starts with the decisions made by this body.
And as in the past, our general plan has always been around the historical aspect of early California history in San Juan, and that's our bread and butter, and the mission, the history earlier. And so
we have a very good general plan. There may not be a lot to change, except perhaps
Yeah.
the land use.
Well, as soon as you start talking about going out farther and picking up new uses,
Yeah.
like if you have an industrial section, a couple of industries come in, then they're going to need ancillary support there. So you're going to have businesses that support those industries. Next thing, you're going to have workers. Where are they living?
Housing, yeah.
You need housing. See how it's all interrelated. Just because you put a factory out there that has 300 employees
And a bike path.
and a bike path. No, I want to walk that thing, but
Yeah.
you know, the lady was right.
Yeah.
Been there, done that, and it can get scary out there.
I used to walk on Highway 1 from where I lived to the post office, and you know, the trail's about this big next to the highway, and you see these guys coming down with these big mirrors,
Yeah.
and I just kept thinking, you know, just like
close for comfort.
scary is the word. And I don't want kids to have to deal with that.
But at the same time, you really have to be careful, regardless. When you're out there on the road, because you got to watch where you're going. So, it's a lot better than what it was. A lot better.
At best, it's a class 3. There's no barriers. You're right there sharing. No, you're not sharing. You have the line.
It's only a line out there, not
Right,
even
but sometimes you didn't
well-marked.
have a line. They would just say, hey, this is the bike route. If you want to use bikes to get from here to there, try these roads.
Those great big trucks this time of year.
They can blow you off. They can blow you over.
Yeah.
But, and it isn't a state highway, so the county can set the speed limits on it. And the question is what? And speaking of that road, Roger, just not too far north of our city limit line, that thing is one beat up piece of junk there. It's you got a smooth road, and all of a sudden I don't know whether the pavement has melted, and it's just from brakes and
On the highway.
You're talking about
yeah,
how far?
less than a half mile, I'd say.
Right beyond Awani, yeah, right. Yeah, we recognize that, and we're going to have to do something.
You mean where the fault is at? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah,
What vault?
Fault.
the fault.
Oh, the fault.
You're talking about just outside the city limits.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the fault. That's
it runs
you got
across.
two plates there moving.
Two plates, and it runs across and into the Nylands, and then
And
up
I
toward
don't understand
the quarry.
when they did that whole section, why couldn't they just do that little tidbit right there?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just maybe a day's work there.
Need to put a white line down that thing so we can see that
Yeah,
things happen.
yeah, it's moving.
That'd be something we could tell tourists. Hey,
There's areas in Hollister where we grew up where the curbs and
Yeah.
sidewalks and everything.
I noticed
and
on
then
my walk this morning, there's some-
every year a bunch of geologists from going to school, they have
Yeah.
tours of the
Yeah,
place.
they still do that.
Yeah.
We went last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another fault between Earthbound and Answer. Just as you pass going north, just as you pass Earthbound, there's one right there.
It's
Yeah.
a splinter of
see, it's something we could do. We could have the San Juan
Earthquake walk.
Yeah.
Earthquake walk.
When we had the big one, the asphalt just folded over in no sections.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
you have to drive off the road to get around.
Okay, where are we on this thing?
Does anyone from the audience want to speak?
Oh, I'm sorry. We're talking about sphere of influence and the general plan and the future of the cities. Would anyone like, if public like to speak about this? You have the right.
Would
No,
you mind-
please come to the mic and state your name for the record.
Rosemary Hernandez. Just thinking about that in terms of the growth that just happened for Earthbound Farms, the increase in traffic, the doubling of the semis that are on the road, having not had that property being annexed, it sounds like we didn't really have a lot of conversation or vote or information about it. So, thinking about that and also what Mr. Franco has said, if people do just decide to plop down and get approval from the county and do whatever, we may still be held accountable to have to provide them water and sewer. So although the sphere of influence sounds kind of scary to get that big, but then you think, what if we don't? And you're looking 20 years down the road, something with bright neon signs, it's totally breaking all of the things that we want San Juan to be, and then we wouldn't have any vote on it. So I think that would be a good thing to consider.
Thank
Is
you.
Mrs. Hernandez on the committee?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, she should be on the general plan committee. Yes. What was your name again?
Oh, we need phone numbers. We're always looking for folks to serve on these committees, and you clearly have an interest.
That's right.
And with children, you're going to have an interest for a long time. So this is a good place to be.
And as we go up to the mouth of San Juan Canyon, and then also think about is up the Salinas Grade Road, how far we want to go up there.
Yep.
And then how far we want to go out on the San Justo towards the San Juan Aromas.
So
Yeah,
can we establish something today, like 3 miles up the canyon, 4 miles?
No.
Well, let me get the expanded.
I mean, it
map.
doesn't.
We're still in
We're still
discussion.
going to discuss it.
Yeah.
But I think what you want to do is start getting some feedback from people up in the canyon. I mean, for one thing, it's for us to say we're going to do it,
Well,
and the other thing is to say, somebody's going to say, well, you never even asked us.
yeah, but we're only in a proposal stage right now, anyway.
Well, up San Juan Canyon is pretty clear. It has a cul-de-sac ending up there.
Any other members of the audience want
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on the matter? We're talking about the sphere of influence, a proposed sphere of influence, a revision of a sphere of influence for the city, and
to initiate our general plan?
we're going to be doing a general plan, which the two have to be related.
Okay, yes, my name's Jerome Peters, and I have a lot of land that's bisected by this sphere of influence.
Oh, okay.
So, I don't know.
Whereabouts is your property, sir?
It's the 35 acres up Salinas Grade Road, and as you see the line that goes in a diagonal, it bifurcates Jerome's piece there, and half of it's in the sphere of influence, and half of it's in the outside.
I thought we were working on not having that happen anymore.
Yeah, right, and our new general plan will not allow that. But he has this piece of property, and it's situated right in here.
It doesn't make sense to have to go to two bodies to...
35 acres and everything, and half of it's here and half it's there.
Now, these are what happens when bureaucrats just send a line down.
So, yeah, is there a way for me to find out then what does it mean, or is it going to be that way? I mean, this is a proposal, but over time things...
No, right now, we have to update our general plan. And as long as we're going to be doing that, we're talking about how far should we be looking into the future. The sphere of influence also happens to deal with things that happen that are not in the county. So I would not want a major subdivision out there that we heard about when the traffic started coming through San Juan. So if they're going to put a major subdivision, should we push for annexation or just send them water, sewer, and storm drain? But so the sphere of influence is what we want to determine how big should it be and in all directions. And in your situation, like I said, going through two bodies, if you were to make a proposal at the county, I would support that we would talk with them and say, hey, let us handle it because we're going to push for annexation. We're not going to have a development what's half in the city and half in the county.
And I guess to put it in perspective, this is the start of a long process that involves developing a general plan, and part of it is developing a sphere of influence of where we can provide service, and then we have to go back and then prepare our general plan that has certain elements, and that interfacing will probably take a couple of years, and then once that new general plan is adopted, that's what we live with.
We provide fire service up San Juan Canyon, but they were unincorporated, and theoretically, we wouldn't have anything to say about what happens up there. That doesn't make sense when we're providing a service, and we have a say in the matter.
Does your property go more up the Salinas Grade Road?
I'm sorry?
Your property, I think, must go up the Salinas Grade Road.
About a quarter of a mile beyond the fish place, maybe.
It's before the Renton Court.
The what?
The
Renton Quarry,
Okay.
a little subdivision with the 4 homes up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just walking distance to town, but pardon, I'm a novice at this, but I don't understand the benefits and non-benefits, or what does it buy me? Or should I be happy about this? Should I be excited, or is this going to be more paperwork for anything that I want to get accomplished?
You're going to be stuck with paperwork no matter what you do. But what we want to do is to make sure that whatever happens on that property is coordinated with what happens in the city of San Juan Bautista.
I would say overall, if the total property was included in the sphere of influence, it lends itself to where it can be developed to city standards, that the water system can be provided, that'll give you that ability, sewer, and so you have more of the urban amenities that you would have rather than in the county on septic tank and individual wells. Yeah.
But that all has a cost. And
Yes. Yeah.
Are you thinking of a development for your property?
I'm thinking right now, I like to have some flexibility. I don't have plans for subdividing, but
You know, as the general plan program goes through, you would want to be part of that committee that starts discussing land use as to what's happening around you, because what happens around you might have an influence on what you want to do with your property. But we're not there yet. But again, we want to make sure that the area that we're going to be looking at, we're trying to define the area we're going to start looking at. Certain parts we want to say maybe annex, maybe certain parts like the agricultural fields. We want to, in our influence, sphere of influence, so we know what's happening, but maybe not necessarily annex. And in your case, you know, there's a lot more urbanization happening on San Juan, on the Salinas Road, than there is, say, on the other side where just the great agricultural fields are.
is there a way of knowing for people like me to find out more what it means? Or
The Office of Planning and Research has a very good website. The Governance Office of Planning and Research has a great website, and there's an awful lot of information on that. There's the general plan guidelines. You see how that's put together.
And the other thing is you have to stay involved and participate in the meetings and keep track of things. And I think that's the key to it, irrespective of all the guidelines. You know, any property owner has to be involved in what goes around him to make sure that he's part of that solution.
First thing I would recommend is to get the Deputy City Clerk your email address so that you get copies of the agendas of the Council and the Planning Commission, so you can see what's coming up. And if an item is relating to anything that's of your interest in your property, that you would be down here.
okay, well,
But you
that's why I'm here. And
can't do it until she has a way to communicate with you.
Okay.
You're doing the right thing by by believing that this is a public venue. You're welcome whether you live in San Juan Bautista or not.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Real good. Okay, is any other discussion on this matter? Oh, okay.
Bob, okay,
Come
come
on.
on. You got to give you.
Come on, Bob. Let's hear it.
You're a regular. You're part of the family now.
You must have put it in paper. Surprise us.
What prompted me to say that I had something to say was I think it's a two-way street. I think Mr. Peters, he has property next to where I live, 1133 Salinas Road, that had a city water connection to it, which the city wasn't really aware of. So when you talk about including San Juan Canyon possibly as a future annexation, that would make it seem like pretty obvious that annexing that property, which already has water, or our property, which has city water, would be part of the discussion.
And it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all.
Isn't annexing to a very
Premature.
strong word, and it's premature? We're just talking about the influence,
Influence,
so
right.
that we know what's going on there, and we're not completely surprised as we make our own plans within the city.
Our general plan will be within that sphere.
Yeah,
And you
but
got a
not necessarily
Yeah.
annexing.
Annexation.
And you got a good point, is annexation is a whole nother animal in itself,
Yes.
because you have to be contiguous.
And serious.
Yes.
A lot of
To-
people wouldn't want to be annexed to San Juan.
Yeah, exactly.
San Juan Canyon?
Well, San Juan Canyon has always liked to be ourselves.
Pardon me if this is implied or incorrect, but I bought the property mid-March. I started investigating the month before. I have received 4 or 5 different messages about the water. And it just, think of me as an outsider, don't know anything about the situation. I get one message. My real estate agent and me were both told there's a meter in that line. We don't know where it is, but there's a meter in that line. So I make the decision, I buy the property. It's like, well, nope, there's no meter. But you can get a meter. Oh no, actually, take a step back. The second one was, okay, there's no meter, but we can get a flat rate. So fine, all right, I'm thinking, I have a water solution. And then there's, no, we're not offering that. You have to get a meter, and you have to pay like it's a brand new hookup.
Yeah.
And I have this line came with the property. It's been there for years. Whoever owned the line before has been paying the water dues. I don't think I should have to pay for brand new infrastructure like a new housing development where you just kind of pass it on. Like I'm a developer and I'm going to pass on high fees to the buyer because, you know, that's often the way things work in life. And so I just don't know where I stand.
Well, I recommend that you meet with staff.
No, it's a little bit more complicated than that because that existing water line that was there was put in for agriculture purposes. It's a substandard line, very small. However, there are people that have water meters over it. And the city's position has always been if we're going to provide water, it has to meet the city standards. But we're going to honor those commitments that agricultural use has been there. And he could probably put one house there. The minute that you develop it and expand beyond that one house, you've got to bring it up to city standards. And I think that I've indicated that to him. And he's agreeable to that because he just has one house. But it is a substandard line, and unfortunately, years ago, it was put in for, you know, cattle feeding there, and it's kind of, and that happens out quite a bit. We're trying to address that to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. But I think we've got an amenable solution where he doesn't have to pay a new connection fee, and we're just going to put a meter on it, and then he will have use of that for his single-family house.
Good. Now, I think we're getting beyond the role of the Planning Commission on that. That's a very specific issue.
Yes, yeah.
And I thank you for bringing it in. I'm glad you talked with staff, and it sounds like it's being resolved, hopefully to your favor.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm working on it. I only have so much time to live, and
Sounds good.
it's kind of the first step in getting things started. So any progress that can be made would be greatly appreciated.
Great. Thank you. Okay, is there any other speakers on this topic? Okay, then let's go to the next one. The sign code status.
We will meet on June 13th, Thursday, here, 9 o'clock. That may be our last meeting as a group before we go out to the merchants or have the merchants come to us, whichever is going to work.
Is it online yet? Will it be? Or
Are we going to put it online at this point?
The draft board? Just a draft?
Yeah, when we meet the 13th and everything there, we get it and we can put it online.
The draft has been online.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that this
But that's an older,
Update.
Yeah.
Update,
No.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important when we talk about the 13th of the sequence and the strategy of how to get everybody involved, particularly the downtown. 90% of the sign applications are commercial downtown, and so we want to engage the Chamber Committee and all of the merchants to let's get involved and see how it affects them.
After that process, it goes to lawyers to prepare as a legal document, and then that would a month or two, and then
Well,
2 months.
after it survives the public input there, then we prepare it, and then it comes back to you for adoption by resolution and recommendation to the City Council. Then it goes upstairs to the City Council, and then they hold a public hearing, and then they approve it by ordinance, and then it's codified.
And the process in the lawyer's office
Yeah, that
takes
goes.
a month or two, or
Yeah.
so we're talking a long time, aren't we?
Hopefully,
they can't do it until we hand it to them.
I know. And I see the proliferation of a lot of signs in town. It's just as if an epidemic has struck, seeing how far they can stretch the signs.
Well, as long as they're legal, no problem.
Okay.
Got to watch it. Okay, is that it now? Item C, certified local government certification. Staff?
I think that was a carryover, and Amanda, did you have any report on that?
No. I told Trish, and you probably told Trish. Did
yeah.
Ernest?
I have paperwork
Okay.
documenting.
And there was an online course where you take
I
and
haven't seen it. I haven't.
bring it up
Yeah,
and
we
everything.
did.
And then
Did
there
you
was
get mine?
another seminar, I think, was it over in Monterey?
Yeah.
Did you see it?
We went to that.
We went last year, yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So when does the State Office of Historic Preservation contact you, or have they?
I'm not in the loop for getting their emails.
Ever? Oh, do you?
Okay.
Most of the emails I get are from other jurisdictions that are part of it, and it comes on the email list
The
every
CLG,
morning,
yeah.
and I'll read them, and if it pertains to us, I'll save it. Maybe we should contact them and get it.
Well,
yeah.
I'm sure they'll contact us if there's something.
Don't we
mess.
have to renew occasionally? Are we just
I think we have to
automatic
record
after
our-
our first?
Yes, I remember Matthew.
I
Yeah.
thought we had to
requesting
s-
as everybody
The
whole
turn in
report?
the form that
Yeah.
you have.
Uh-huh.
Says how we remain certified. So,
Yes, so,
I will have you informed before the next meeting.
It's an interesting
It's happening.
PowerPoint, yeah.
Very good.
I did it. I don't understand why I didn't get the form.
Well, there really isn't a form.
Okay.
Oh.
I just,
So, any other comments? Anybody in the public want to comment on a certified local government certification? No, okay. How about the city planner report?
Well, just to bring you up to date, at our last meeting, we had the initial study, and we went through for the brewery building and the rehabilitation of that. And I got together and cranked out a mitigated negative declaration.
Yeah, very good.
It kind of documents those areas. And I've identified some mitigations that are in there under the environmental review and summary of the mitigation measures. And we start out, we go into aesthetics, and you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the purpose of this is to get you to think that maybe we should include some more mitigation in there, or if I've covered it adequately. I got air pollution or air quality, biological resources. I tried to address.
Have we ever
things-
had anybody identify rare and endangered species in the city?
We have a tree ordinance of plants and animals, but no animal endangered species.
Probably check.
Yeah, particularly is when the Valley Verde Assessment District, Creek Bridge developed, they had to do a biological study down along that creek there, and I think that was the last one that we had done, and that's documented. Yeah.
so you haven't submitted this yet?
No. This is just in a draft form, and I'm still correcting it. There's spelling errors, and then I've added a few more things there. Cultural resources, geological, greenhouse gas, and I just talked with some more people today, and I might have a couple more greenhouse gas mitigations, hazardous waste, hydrology, land use, population mitigation, public service, transportation, utility services, and then we go down to the last one, and that is after we've identified all of the mitigation, you recognize that you have to make your findings of significance. And then after you make that, then we get into the approval of the subdivision or development, and the conditions of approval. And many of the conditions of approval will have mitigations as well as conditions of approval. And those are the things that go with that project in itself. But the mandatory findings I had was that the project is consistent with the zoning district to which the property is located. So that the project will require mitigation measures and conditions of approval that is consistent with the goals, objectives, and preservation guidelines of the historical district. That the project is desirable and beneficial to the city for the purpose of restoring, preserving, and reconstructing and replicating the brewery building as a significant contributor to San Juan Bautista's historical district. that the project is consistent with a permitted use allowed by the zoning ordinance and will be properly related to the transportation facilities and other facilities in the surrounding area and will not cause an undue environmental impact related to noise, odor, and pollution. That the project is necessary and desirable in relationship to the purpose and intent of the San Juan Bautista General Plan and the economic stability and well-being of the city. That the use does not adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of persons living or working in the vicinity or be materially detrimental to the public welfare of the city and its residents. The project will not adversely affect the character of the historical or designated historical district, and the project will be compatible with the appearance of existing improvements on the site, and that the new work will be compatible with massing, sizing, scale, and architectural features to protect the historical integrity of the site and its environment.
If this wasn't in the historical district, it would be a no-brainer.
No-brainer.
It'd be a complete commercial project in a commercial area, and it would benefit the city all around.
Yeah.
Because of the historical aspect, that brings us to the magnifying glass, and every little thing that they do is a concern to us. I mean, if you want the building the way it is, you want it moved. If it was any other building, it wouldn't matter. So basically, what we want to do is to make sure that we maintain the heritage, the cultural heritage of that site, and as much as we can. Looks like the building, replicate the building.
And I've spoken with the owner. He came in the other day, and he was very enthusiastic. He has identified an area where once after the approval and he starts to restore and preserve those elements and architectural features, he's going to cordon off an area. It's going to be right behind the phase 2 of the existing residence there, so they can keep an eye on that and preserve that and store it so it won't be subject to vandalism and pilferaging and stuff like that, so that once the building is rebuilt, that material can be reused into it.
We had our Historical Society meeting last Saturday, and the featured speaker, her family had lived in the brewery at one time, and we had Richard spoke about his family time there, and 2 more people. So there are 4 different people speaking about their time residing in the brewery, and so we have that on tape that would be good for the oral history.
Yeah, and that's one of the criteria that we want to do is that we want to do an oral presentation that we have taped so that there. We want to take more pictures and substantiate what we're doing, and that's part of the thing. And
As people come to the desk or the staff or office, and if there are any people who come, we need to get a list of who they are, and so that we could call them back, do oral interviews of them. If we found someone recently who we didn't know had lived there, and so we need anybody who calls or asks. We need to be able to find out who they are and talk with them.
During these hearings, we can ask if the general public. Each time we just ask, is anybody here who lived in it or is related to it?
The CMAP would be their expression of how they were involved in the history of it.
And I did take the San Juan design guidelines, and they have a section in there on general rehabilitation principles, and I tried to follow those through, where it's an effort to try to retain and restore the original elements, replace the architectural features if necessary. When an entire piece of building is missing, try to recreate it and use modern parts, but at the same architectural style. Rehabilitation efforts should be not try to create or add preconceived conceptions of history, but should be used to existing and appropriate features.
I was looking through the general plan earlier today, and even in '98 there were references to the Secretary of the Interior Standards. So it's a good general plan and good design guidelines. And
So where are we going to go with this right now on this draft?
If you see some glaring things there, I
No,
want
not
to
me,
get it. I
personally,
want to
no.
get it ready. The CEQA guideline says that I have to notice it and circulate it for a minimum of 20 days. I'd like to have it more than that. And then we bring the comments back, and then it's back in front of you for discussion.
If you do revise it and redistribute it, could we paginate it from the beginning? Because there's different pagination. Well,
Yeah.
it's not consistent anyway.
Oh, yeah, no, I will do that, yes.
And also, since it is a draft, put the line numbers on it. That way, if somebody wants to make a comment, page 27,
Yeah.
line 16, and it might, and that way
Easier,
you know it's
yeah.
a draft because it's set up as one.
Oh, that's easy to do. You know how to, you know? Oh, you're not? Whoever's typing it, because it just press a button and it does it magically. On page,
So, okay, well, before we go, is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on the, well, nobody's seen it.
Yeah, is there one of these at the
It
counter?
just,
You mean on the draft here?
After tonight, we will document it, and it'll be available.
Okay.
when do you anticipate, after our June meeting, then you would circulate it? Or before?
Your
We're
June
talking
meeting is
July.
now, we'll
This
make
is
the
the
fin-
June meeting.
Yeah, we'll make the final thing, and then we'll circulate it, and it'll be back in for your July meeting.
It will be circulated, and the 20 days will have been,
Yeah.
so
Right.
the public will have been able to review it before our next meeting.
That's what the 20 days is for, so they
Yeah.
they have the right to look at
So
it.
this is sort of an announcement that they should be looking for it.
Exactly.
Is it online? Is it on the city's website?
And to discuss it and review it.
Not
At this
yet.
point, it's not online, not until it's approved.
Okay.
And that's,
Okay.
hopefully we'll do that in July.
Okay.
Can we talk about the July meeting?
Yes.
That's coming up next.
Is that on the schedule?
Future agenda item.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Please come to the mic.
About the brewery building, I'm sorry I don't know the answer, but now you mentioned a rehabilitation, so will that be opening up as a museum, or will it be opening up?
No, the developer, the owner is proposing to take it apart, store all the usable material, and then rebuild it because it's beyond hope. But we want to keep that feeling of that building in the corridor, the entryway corridor. So when it's finished, it will look like the pictures of the 30s when it was at its height. It will look like that building, except it will be all new materials inside, rewired, replumbed, and everything. And then he's going to put a second building behind it with commercial on the bottom and apartments on the top. And then
But-
landscape the whole area with parking.
I think she was asking, what is the brewery going to be used for?
Yeah, will
Use-
it reopen
that's
as a
That's up
rest?
to the owner. He could put a microbrewery, a restaurant, he could have
It'll
stores
be
in
commercial
there.
use.
Yeah.
Bouquet,
Okay. So
it's-
my only
it's-
question then again is, looking at in terms of the family aspect, we have quite a few restaurants that are serving alcohol, quite a few different alcohol permits. We have 2 bars in town. We have a new wine thing. So I just wonder in terms of how we look at things that are within our annex or that are within our city boundaries, and just really asking the question in terms of how much alcohol do we really need to sell, and what is the commitment for youth programs for children, minors under 21, to do something else besides try to figure out a way to get access to that alcohol.
It goes back to the economy.
Yes.
The owner is not going to create something for the youth if it does not economically substantiate his investment.
And I don't think he should, but I think as a city
Yes.
planning department or within what we're looking at as a rehabilitation, is that given the fact that the brewery is now opening in 2013 or whenever, and it should reflect the current community and perhaps have something like additional hours for the sheriff's department to come out and do some type of anti-drug, anti-alcohol on a monthly basis at our schools. I just think that there should be some way for us to say, hey, we're a city and we care about our families, and you're bringing in these tax dollars, and that's great, but at the same time, let's be aware of the fact that we're bringing in more alcohol into our city limits.
Well, people do use it, and that's a fact. But in terms of what's taught in the schools, this is why you want to go to the meetings of the Board of Education. Because, like I said, nothing we do here, it's a separate government. And nothing that we do here is binding on them.
No.
So if you want to reach them...
But I think where you're missing is the uses versus the reconstruction. Uses are permitted in the zoning ordinance. And when you develop a commercial building, you are allowed those uses. And that could be any number of uses. But we cannot dictate to that person, oh, you're going to do this, or you're going to do that.
I understand.
He's allowed that by law.
But as a planning department, in terms of looking at our general plan, again, going back to the plan for 2015, is our goal was to increase city parks. And so where do we do that, or how do we find times to increase city parks when we're opening up new restaurants and giving more liquor licenses to businesses in town?
However, the location of this restored building is right next to a school, and the alcoholic beverages rules would come into effect for review.
Well, you sell alcohol right across the street in the store and in the pizza parlor. Okay, before you can sell alcohol in the state of California, you need a permit from the Alcoholic Beverage Control. And there's a new law that requires you have to find a public necessity, and I forget the word, but there's a full public hearing on that by the ABC to review it, to make sure that there isn't a problem. And then you have to have training now for your servers, so that if they see certain signs, they know when to cut you off and who to call if there's a problem. So things are a lot different than they used to be.
And I guess for me, just looking in terms of the general plan, I mean, we have time to discuss how many neon signs we have. You know, we have signs in our plans in our city on how much acreage or how much open space we have per resident. Maybe we need to consider how many alcohol licenses we want to have in the general plan. I mean, I'm definitely going to be part of that conversation between 2015 and 2035.
Well,
I hope to retire here, and I don't want to see a whole bunch of liquor stores.
You want to be on the committee.
Yes, I do.
There were a lot of bars in town years ago.
Yeah.
But see, the questions that you bring up are reasonable.
Yeah.
But again, you have to remember and never forget the rights of the individuals.
Yes.
And when we pass an ordinance, that's a law, that gives them certain rights to do certain things with property. But also within a controlled situation where just because you have a restaurant doesn't mean you can start putting it on the streets, or if you want to sell alcohol, you just can't go out and peddle it, send guys running out with pitchers.
Yeah, I just, I think about, the children that attend San Juan Elementary School and walk from San Juan Elementary School home to, our development, which is a mile down. They're passing how many different alcohols and different restaurants, so I'm glad that the brewery is going to be, kind of historical, and I would hope that, part of that planning or whatever we do in terms of the rehabilitation, we look at the visibility of people drinking alcohol and the advertisement for alcohol and making sure we're keeping that off of the main street. If it's going to be behind it, then that's fine, but maybe it goes back to signage or part of the rehabilitation plan about where alcohol is going to be visibly...
No, we're not talking rehabilitation of people. We're talking about that building coming down and being rebuilt.
Yeah, but I'm looking at like a restaurant like Hardeen's. You can walk by Hardeen's and you're not necessarily seeing people drink alcohol.
Oh, the building is set back.
That's what I'm...
The building is set back.
As
Well, you see it now.
Yes.
And once it's landscaped, you're going to probably see less of it.
Yeah, so maybe in the rehabilitation, maybe some type of something that deviates from the...
When the time comes for them to get their permits, at that point, these kind of questions could be submitted or be presented, and when you start doing environmental review or conditions of permits, that is when those mitigations come in.
Okay.
And again, we'd be glad to talk with you, other than at a meeting time, but that's where you would do it.
Thank you.
At that point. Okay?
Okay.
Sounds
And
good?
you're also invited to come back, and we're ready to listen to your views and or suggestions anytime.
Okay. Is there any other comments on this document? Okay. We'll go to the next one. Future agenda items. What are we looking for in the next few meetings?
Well, I think we need to look at the next meeting date. That would be July 2nd. Are we all going to be here?
Oh, wow.
I don't have
All
a
he
problem.
needs is a quorum.
Yeah, I'll be
Yeah.
here.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to be here.
Okay. Good.
Right now I would be, but I'd have to tell you.
I am going to request that the August meeting be continued from the 6th to the 13th, because I will be out of the country on August the 6th.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
Skype, maybe.
So
That's right. Take your computer with you.
Planning
Set up the
vacation,
little-
Chris.
Yeah, I can
You sipping your Mai Tai on the beach there?
Skype you guys. Yeah. But the July meeting would be
The second, yeah.
Yeah.
So no problem? I guess he has no problem, our rooster friend.
City Hall going to be open on the 2nd?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Six,
that's
okay.
all.
So July 2 and July 13.
Oh,
Or August 13. Now, what do you want to have, since we're talking about future items, what do you want to have at these meetings?
well,
Big-
LAFCO, perhaps?
Okay, LAFCO, okay, for July, we'll go ahead, anything we can get on LAFCO. How are we doing on the non-compliance with permits?
Yeah, I just looked at that this morning, and
Okay.
I'll have
If
that
you-
back
if you
on.
have a chance.
Yeah, I'll have that back on.
Okay, permits. Any other planning items?
Feral chickens.
Rooster control?
Animal control.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, we can discuss more of the sphere of influence.
Sphere of influence, okay. Yeah, that,
I mean, we're heading towards the general plan, so we can keep that discussion going.
Yeah.
okay,
And maybe we'll see some new,
Yeah. I think we should
New
have
maps.
that on almost every agenda from now on.
I agree.
Keep
proposal
it
maps.
on the radar.
Yeah.
and also signs, we'll get a status, because we'll have a meeting, 2 meetings before then. We'll have a status on
Right.
the sign permits, on the sign ordinance. Anything else we want to do? I was thinking of something else, but it goes in your commission, your board. I'm set. Anything else? Just let it go. Remember, if something comes up, you can always call Roger and ask him to put on the agenda. You have the right to do that. If something comes up. Or, as long as it's 72 hours, that's all we got to do.
This is going to be on the agenda, right?
Will that be ready for public discussion in July?
Oh, yes.
That'll be,
Okay.
it will still be discussion, or will it become an action item?
It'll be,
Probably an action item.
So we'll have the full public hearing on it. People can come in and comment on it.
it'll be a vote to recommend to council.
No.
No?
No.
We did that one.
This is required before you can consider any type of approval. And so the HRB will, after they approve this, then it comes to the HRB for conditions of approval, and you can attach mitigations, conditions, then you recommend to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
So this comes to planning next in July, and then it would go
No.
back to the HRB
No.
by August,
No, it'll go to the
RB is-
HRB in
and planning.
July.
next.
And
Both boards at that evening.
Because HRB can't do anything on this
Because
until
it's
this
in the
has been
historical
adopted.
district,
I know.
HRB has to review it first.
First. Okay.
We recognize that.
Perhaps during this whole discussion in the future, we might take a look at buildings that were considered historic, which are not in the historic district if they become before planning.
Well, I looked at that in terms of your guidelines, and there's various categories, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you get down into level 5, 5D, 5D3, it gives you the ability where if it's not in the historical district and it's significant, but it's not a major contributor, it's exempt, as a category exempt from CEQA. And it doesn't necessarily, it could be issued over the counter the way the guidelines said,
And some of the buildings
Yeah.
are quite significant, and people don't even know that
Know
they
that,
are, and
yes.
they're outside of the district, and there's
Yeah, and
perhaps some discussion in town about some changes being made. So perhaps we need to take a look at buildings that
Now, would this
have
be the...
been historically significant, but they were left out of the historic district.
Now, would this be the historical board to do that? Or
I don't know, we need to...
I think it should be, because it's the historical board by its very name and nature. That's what you should be doing. And then, when you get that list, kick it up to the planning commission to say, okay, we accept this, and make sure that it goes into the historical element of the general plan.
And
Because we want to take a good look at that.
your guide, I mean, your
Inventory.
San Juan Certified Local Government Historical Resources and Contact Statement, it gives you criterias like 5D1, contributor to an existing district, contributor to a new district, and it gives you major alterations, minimal alterations. Some are exempt, some don't, and some do not need approval from the HRB and can be issued by over-the-counter. So there's guidelines in here that we
Yes.
kind of follow.
And we need to get to those so that we understand and that things don't slip through the cracks.
I think those status codes have changed, too.
Some of them
Yeah.
have changed, yes, right, yeah, exactly. And
So
it was
shall we call that
interesting because
status code?
in the attachment A, you get into the ones, 1D, that's, very, it says properties listed in the National Register, And then 2s are properties that determine eligible. And then 3s are appears eligible to the National Register. And then you get down to 4, appear eligibility for a national, and the California registration. And then 5 is a lot of them that sits in here is properties are recognized that are historically significant to our area. And those are the 5s, and those are the ones that we have to decide.
Yeah.
Some of them are significant contributors, and some of them are, they minor alterations.
Even that's almost 10 years old now.
Yes. Wow. Yes. 206.
Okay. Any other items on future? Okay, how about comments? Any planning commissioner comments?
Are we going in order? Every time I drive by the brewery, I think of how dilapidated it's looking and how unsecure it is. Plywood that had been placed against the basement seems to be pulled away, and people are probably still getting in. Is that supposed to be fenced off, or?
I told him there, I says he's going to get some laborers and because we don't want people going down underneath that. Yeah, right.
How about a perimeter fence?
He also has requested that the garage, if he can start to dismantle that.
Yeah, because it'll go before.
And I told him, I says, until he gets that designated area where it's secure for the dismantling of it, and he can, that we won't give him that permission until he does that. Yeah.
How about a perimeter fence? There used to be one.
Yeah, there used to be a there. Yeah.
That would solve a lot of problems, because
yeah.
they wouldn't be able to get that close to the buildings to do any damage to it.
Yeah.
It's a good thing it's out in plain view.
Yeah.
Do we want to recommend?
And just by opening up and getting rid of all of the shrubbery, it brings out the presence of it, and so many people have come in, and
Yeah.
Start looking for
just now
souvenirs.
he wants to start cleaning up the yard and the peripheral around it.
Do you want to ask staff to
I'll approach him and then
hit him for a
Yeah.
perimeter
so that he
fence?
can
Yeah.
secure the building. Yeah.
Okay.
Construction.
By consensus, then, we would like to see a fence around the property for its own protection?
Yes.
Okay.
So-
Okay, under comments, Commissioner?
No.
Commissioner? I have one. I'll just make, the last meeting, we approved the recognitions document for the Pollies? Hawks. And just so you know, at the last council meeting, it was presented to them. I think they were very happy with it. I had breakfast over there, and they were still happy about it. So I'm glad that they did a lot of good work on that thing, and they do have some great gluten-free food out there. And so, but the fact is that they stuck their necks out, fixed up that building,
Took a long time.
and took a long time to understand, and now we have a building that's been around for a long time. It still has the flavor of the ambience for San Juan Bautista that we've been looking for.
Good.
That's all I've got. If there's nothing else, I call, city manager, planner.
None?
Any comments? No comments. I call for motion for adjournment.
Do you want the gavel?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody. Unanimous.
All right. Dave, thank